Mhm.
Hello and welcome to the Raising Athletes podcast, or maybe welcome back. Hopefully you're a returning listener and maybe even viewer. This time we're trying something new. We're going to do some audio and visual, so maybe you get a chance to see us on a couple different channels. But my guest today is amazing. I'm so excited to have her on. But before I introduce her, I just want to say Susie's birthday is today, so she's not here. But my name is Kirsten Jones. I'm a peak performance and sports parenting coach, and I love helping others figure out what's holding them back, releasing it, and getting out of their own way. Because when we can do that with for ourselves and then for our kids, everybody, is able to be the best version of themselves. So today we have Julie Shackford on. This is a first for me, but I feel like I know her already. But I'm so excited to have the women's William and Mary soccer coach on today. Welcome, Julie.
Kirsten, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here and swap stories and help any of the young athletes out there looking for answers or how to approach things.
Yeah, so most of our listeners are moms. We do have some dads listening too, but mostly parents. And we all get stuck. You and I are both parents, get stuck in our own way. I find myself coaching myself times when I'm watching my kid not play or lose or struggle, right? So I would love to, we want to get to later about your team and what you're doing now and how you recruit, but I'd love to start with your journey. We just missed each other at William and Mary by a couple years, but maybe you could take us back to, your coaching journey.
Sure. I've been coaching for 30 years. I went to the College of William and Mary, which just William and Mary now, and then wanted to head to law school to be a sports agent or a athletic director. And my AD at William and Mary called me up and he said, Carnegie Mellon, a Division III program in Pittsburgh, wants to start a women's soccer program, and they're interested in somebody who wants to be an administrator. He's like, why don't you do it for a year, John Randolph? And I was like, it's probably not a bad idea, and then go to law school. Well, I got to Carnegie Mellon. I was able to start a club team and then get it to varsity status, and they paid for my master's, and I never looked back. Spent 5 years there, 20 at Princeton, took a little bit of a hiatus to get remarried, moved back to Northern Virginia, which is where I grew up. Coached in a club there called FC Virginia. And then when my coach retired at William & Mary, was brought back to the tribe. It was kind of a full circle moment.
And somewhere in there, you had some kids along the way too, right?
I did. I had 3 kids. I have twins that are sophomores in college and a senior who's at William & Mary.
And so what have their sports journeys been? And how did they watch you do what you were doing? I saw one video that they had of you in Princeton, and the kids were on the field with you and coming to practices. And how did that evolve?
It was amazing that they had the opportunity to be on campus at Princeton for, most of their formative years, and had access to all the sports and played all the sports growing up, and ended up 2 out of the 3 ended up, pursuing soccer at the college level. And my son is now a kicker at Iowa State, so took his soccer skills there. And I think that I never really controlled any of their soccer stuff. Like, they were always invited, and I did some assistant coaching with them, but it was very, I don't want to say hands off, because that's not quite right, but it was definitely not like, because I'm a soccer coach, you guys should play. And they really played all the sports and really just love soccer. They were passionate about it.
Talking about kids kind of coming to it organically, right?
Yes.
There was no you having a master plan and being Geppetto.
No, but I do think like the women that I had, the student athletes at Princeton, like they were such role models for my kids too. And the men's team as well, that, they were consistently around it too, which I'm sure didn't hurt.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Can you think about, let's go down the mom parent route for a second, about times when things weren't going well, or they were frustrated, or you were frustrated, and how do you maneuver through those? I get parents all the time.
Yeah.
In fact, it's funny. I was laughing to myself the other day. I've got a certain group of friends that, can we just go for a hike? And I'll be hiking, and then they'll be like, I just have to vent, and you will listen.
Yeah.
Right? And I get it. Like, I feel, I told, and then they apologize. I'm so sorry I vented. I'm like, it's stressful. And we moms, I think, parents in general, but I know moms particularly get more emotional and they get more connected to the outcome and worried about the outcome.
Yeah.
So can you speak to how you
Yeah,
dealt with
I mean, I think like coming from the coaching background, like I don't get stressed watching my kids play or not play. Like I don't know if I'm just so desensitized to that or because I'm always having with my team, it's so competitive. Like when I go to watch others, even when it's my kids, it's like super enjoyable to me.
Awesome.
Now, I know that's probably, strange, but that's not to say like, obviously you feel bad, like if your kid's not playing or, that's probably the biggest piece that parents have a hard time with or, player situations or whatever. But I think that, for the most part, I would just give my kids the same advice that, soccer is a very subjective game and, coaches make decisions not always about like talent, but maybe there's matchups, maybe there's, you don't always know. And to not be afraid to reach out to your coaches to talk about things. And I think a lot of times, parents want to do that piece for their kids, but it really is such a great exercise for them, when they get into their whatever, 12, 13, 14, when they can have a discussion with a coach about, why they're not playing or what they can do to get more time. But I think in general for me, like, yes, I feel their pain, but I don't, I'm a little bit, it's like a different realm for me. So I don't know, I don't get as emotional about that piece.
That's amazing. Because as a former player yourself, like I'm just so competitive that it's hard for me to see my kid struggle, right?
Yes.
My daughter didn't get on the floor last week and for 33 matches. And that was right when the college coach was there to watch her and your heart just hurts for them. So
absolutely.
It's hard to separate yourself, but it is one of those things that parents, I always say like, distract yourself, go for a walk, talk to the friend next to you, put a lollipop in your mouth, whatever you need to do to zip it and let them have the experience. It's not our experience, it's their experience, right?
Yeah. And I mean, I think ultimately those, the days they don't get on the court and the times that they're injured and the times that they lose their spot, ultimately, you need all those rocks in the road. And usually if a kid stays with a sport, those will be really like meaningful memories and experiences to, help them succeed in their sport ultimately.
And in life, right? That's life.
And in life.
Yeah. Then it's going to be a professor, then it's going to be a boss, then, there's going to be other bumps in the road that will also throw you off. And now you're like, oh, I've got this in my toolbox because I already dealt with this before. I've seen this one coming, right? Which is
no doubt.
We were talking about that, like our wise 50-plus-year-old selves and the advice that we could give, back then when we took it as, oh, this is awful that this is happening. And in fact, probably were the best gifts that we had.
Yep. No doubt. And, I think that as a young athlete, I think maybe you don't think you have as much control as you have. And, I think advocating for yourself and putting in extra work and it's such a roller coaster going through being an athlete, whether it's at the youth, high school or college level, that it's usually the kids that just keep with it, that end up being successful. Like I find at the college level, it's not always the most talented. It's the kids who have grit, who can show up every day, who are consistent, and their coaches know what they can rely on them for every day.
What about, do you have any sleepers, like ones that may have not like been your best recruit? And then
absolutely. At Princeton and at William and Mary, I've always been open-minded to walk-ons just because at schools like that, so they're such high achieving kids. Mm-hmm. But I had two really good instances at Princeton and one was a kid who just wasn't tough at all. She always wore bows, in her hair to practice, and just, she was very skillful, but just could not like get into battles and win 50-50s and be gritty. So, we talked about it for I think we talked about it for 3 years. And finally I'm like, Liz, like, she's like, Shax, you are not even going to recognize me. And she did all the extra work, got herself into squash courts, into high pressure situations. And in her senior year, she's like, Shax, I had a dream. We're going to beat Harvard. They were our nemesis for a while. and ended up assisting on the winning goal, getting her spot because somebody tore an ACL and took advantage of it. I have another story of a young woman who came to me from California, Northern California, who was a walk-on engineer, brilliant kid. Like, while everyone else was taking naps, she was getting her next problem set, being an engineer. She was a black belt, just a tremendous athlete, and ended up starting on the team that went to the Final Four, which is crazy. So there's all kinds of those stories. Like I think about, like, I know this isn't women, but I think about Brock Purdy being Mr. Irrelevant and then taking his San Francisco team, to the conference championship. Like, I think like so much of it is just about showing up every day.
Yes. So well said. Yeah. And being gritty, being willing to be uncomfortable, being comfortable being uncomfortable. And I think parents, we want to rescue, we want to save,
Absolutely.
We want them to not have pain, and understandably, right? But when you can separate yourself from them and say, this is his pain, he needs to figure it out. Here are some tools, talk to them, take extra reps, do what you need to do. That kind of, let's push into your current team and how, what about at college level? Are parents involved? Are you talking to the parents? How much do you hear from them?
Yeah, I actually have a rule, because when I started out coaching at Carnegie, I was 22, I think, or 23. And I had a father that called me every day about why his kid should be playing. And I finally said to him, look, Mike, you need to come to practice for a week. Okay. Come down, watch practice. Everyone sees the final product and thinks, oh, I could be in that game. Or he ended up never coming. But after that, I decided that I would never talk to parents about playing time. I would talk to them about academics. I would talk to them about health matters, but they are learning how to be adults and having conversations with me about their career is going to be the best way for them to not only make the best of their situation in college, but like, as you said, in the game of life, be able to, advocate for yourself and also learn about your strengths and weaknesses and know that it's not always going to work out the way you think it should. Now, in high school and youth, it's a lot different, right? I think the parents are more involved and kind of have to be, like, in certain ways. So that's the stance I've taken, and it forces the kids to get in and talk to us. And ultimately, it makes for better decisions. It makes for better culture. And there's times when a kid comes in and opens your eyes up to something maybe you hadn't seen before, like maybe you can try me in a different position, or, I just don't think I'm getting enough minutes to really establish myself on the front line. And so, we think of those conversations as two ways. And that, I think that's an important piece to building a student athlete's confidence too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so well said. Yeah, I ran the footwear internship program at Nike for several years, and I remember having a father call me to tell me that his daughter didn't like the laptop she was given, and I just thought, like, what? I'm sorry. Yeah. Same woman or same girl came into my cubicle and said, I'd like an office, please. Like, yeah, I've been here for 13 years.
I know.
You're not getting an office, honey. But
what I think? Yeah, I know. I'm sorry to interrupt. I think, like, we're just so much more entangled as parents, right? Like, I think about your parents and what they did for you, right? Nothing. You kind of sunk or swam, right?
Yeah.
And I think because we have been so, involved, for better or for worse, that, creating those lines is really difficult.
Do you screen for that when you're recruiting?
Absolutely. 100%. No doubt. We do that by conversations that we have, by emails that we get, by sideline behavior, by how the young lady handles himself in the recruiting process, by vetting with all their coaches. So that tells a lot, I mean, it doesn't always tell all, and you can't always imagine how things will go, but yeah, we spend a lot of time because we're recruiting a whole family for 4 years and hopefully for longer than that.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that's so important that parents stay out of it. I have a college athlete right now where, things aren't going great and he, is miserable and he's calling home and we're saying you should go you should go meet with the staff. Like,
Yeah.
who else can you call for advice to? Who's in your network? People that have your club coach from high school, another,
Yeah.
Your coach from prep school. They're all fans of you. So go talk to some other people, get a couple other opinions, because ours is one point of view, which is obviously very biased.
Exactly.
Talking to other people to get, this situation isn't as bad as you think it is, or you're right, it is, so getting an objective point of view is huge.
Yeah, I think I had a woman alum from William & Mary who actually has the only middle school STEM school in Washington, D.C. Her name's Michelle Mason, and she played soccer here. And she said, you have to have your personal board of directors, meaning those 3 or 4 people that you can go to and rely on their, honest feedback, right?
Yeah, because that's what you're going to need as you go through every step of the way. And it can't only be your parents, because
no doubt.
You're just so bought in for obvious reasons, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Great. So let's talk about, we started to get into this right before we started recording, but about mental health. And this is such a huge topic. And we're seeing, these awful suicides and kids taking their lives and feeling the, anxiety and depression and overwhelm. And, used to say, well, it's because they're not working out. They're not eating healthy. They're sitting, but that's not true of these college athletes. They have all those things in balance, and yet it's happening.
It is.
How are you seeing it? And how are you, how do you help your athletes navigate this?
Yeah. I mean, I think things go so fast for these kids, and they've got, things coming 100 miles an hour. I think all the events that are going on in the world, I think that social media plays a huge role, especially in young women, in terms of, everything from how they eat, how they dress, how they feel about themselves, events, just that whole social network thing. And so I think that trying to get to a point where our student athletes can come to training every day, and I don't want to call it an escape, but that they can put whatever they have as, going on in their lives aside, and know that they're coming to a place where, even though they're competing and being motivated and being pushed, that they know that they're part of something bigger, and they know that they can support and land in a place where they're going to get compassion and love. It might be tough love, but I think that's a really important piece. And to have a culture that talks about mental health, like not just writing about it, but talking about it. Like, we'll have kids come in and send them to the right places on campus, or, if we have the expertise, talk to them about what their issues are. And I think just being available for this generation of kids is really, really important. I think they want to be heard. And they aren't helpless, but I think they need somebody to help them make first steps, whether it's going to see somebody, whether it's, not gripping so hard on the steering wheel so they can enjoy things, whether they can put stuff away and focus on one thing at a time, whatever strategies, that we have to help them navigate, being a student athlete where you're putting 40 hours a week into your sport, and then trying to be great in the classroom and, be great everywhere else. It's a lot for them to handle.
How do you create an environment of vulnerability so that it's safe? Because, right, that's a cultural thing. And if you feel like if I show coach I'm weak, that then she's not going to play me. So I've got to have a stiff upper lip. And I feel like there's a lot of kids who, like, I've worked this hard to get to this spot. If I show vulnerability, I'm out, or I'll be, maybe put to the side. So I can't do that. So how do you build that?
I mean, I think part of that comes in the recruiting process, right? We're recruiting kids that it's a two-way street. Like, I think, first of all, we are 3 women coaching on our staff. We're 3 alums. So we've been in their shoes, right? I think when we first took over the program, that really the better part of 2 years was spent on building a culture and what it means to be a tribe women student athlete. We have core values. We have a mission, which states that, there is a net here for all of you to land in. And we bring in speakers. We spend time on it. We spend time on, it could be a skit, like your roommate is complaining about playing time. How do we deal with this? It could be, taking a day off practice and going to get ice cream. And so I think you build that over time. It doesn't happen right away. It's almost like how you build respect. And so I think just over the years, like that message has been brought to our leadership group, and they pass it down to the next group and the next group and the next group. And it's now almost 5 years, and you can feel and see the culture now, which is really cool.
You don't have to carry a big stick. It's baked into who we are, and how we show up.
It is.
The girls coming in get it right away.
Yes.
I feel it.
Yes.
Yeah. You're probably drawn to that in the recruiting process.
They are. And I will say that more student athletes want to know what the resources are, or how you, how you run your program, and what kind of coach are you? And I think they're way more tuned into that. And I think even through COVID that was exacerbated. Like, I think all those kids spending all that time at home, and, just what family is and what home is. And they want to have a piece of that when they're away, and I think I've seen that piece of the process grow.
Which is healthy, I think, for this generation.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like I said to you before, like when I was an athlete, I was just an athlete. That's how I defined myself. When I was done playing, I was a basket case. And, now I think these guys are like, my sport is a part of me, but it doesn't define me.
Yeah. And the tools that are built in fact, I'm speaking for the professional development group in a couple weeks. And wow, when I graduated, I'm like, okay, now what am I going to do? Like, I didn't have a plan. And now that there's resources that are helping kids figure that out and get internships and have exit strategies of, okay, now I can take all that you did as a Division I athlete, which is phenomenal. Like, there are so many people that want to hire for those skill sets that you grew. Right?
Absolutely. Like, I think I saw a stat somewhere yesterday, like 94% of C-suite managers are women, or were women athletes. 94%, something like that.
Yeah, which makes sense. Yeah.
Yes.
So you also wear two hats as the head coach, because your daughter is also she's currently playing for you, right? So,
she is. She was recruited by John Daly. John Daly was my coach too, which is kind of cool. And we always say that we need to get Kaylee a shirt before she graduates, to say that she was recruited by John Daly. Yeah, not by her mom. It's an interesting dynamic. I'm not going to lie, there's been challenges, as you can imagine, with girls. And I think probably it's harder for her, on a certain level. I think with me, like, I've got 3 other coaches to help deal with playing time and her development and that kind of thing. But, I think it's more just the perception of, right? Like, of having your mom as your coach. And I was a single mom for 13 years. So she's always been really independent, and her team is her thing. And that's where her loyalty lies. And so she does a really good job of, it's almost, I don't know if it's sad to say, or if it's just kind of the way it's worked out that, while we're at college, like, I'm coach, you know what I mean?
Okay.
And then when I'm on breaks, I'm mom. And I know that's kind of weird, but I think that's worked for both of us.
But you kind of need to
you do
separate it, right? Yeah. But I also I'm picturing, do girls go to her thinking they're going to get to you?
That's a great question. I don't know. Because she hasn't abused that or anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm sure they do. Maybe she puts it on somebody else to get to me. I don't know. Yeah.
Time will tell.
But luckily she doesn't. Yeah. She's respected that line really well, and I think for the most part it's worked well. It is kind of cool to be able to see her every day. I'm not going to lie. That's cool. Yeah. And, I do get joy out of that, and watching her with her teammates and all those kinds of things. And, but, when she's on the field, she gets treated like every other kid.
That's awesome. I love that. And then that makes sense with how you see the game. You're looking at the game more than you're looking at, and yes, you look at the individual pieces, but you're not like, oh, that's my kid, I've got to strategically place.
And I also think as you build a team with all the pieces, it does become more about the collective and just how it's all working together, and less about her, you know what I mean? And
Yes.
that's the beauty of getting your program to a higher level. And so we're kind of getting to that point now, which is pretty exciting.
I didn't prep you for this, and if you don't have an answer off the top of your head, it's fine. But what just came to me was, who are you most inspired by? Like, what coaching style have you gone after based on how you were coached?
Yeah, well, I had an amazing high school coach who was a woman named Carolyn Rice, who in her 70s now still does Ironmans, and she was way ahead of her time. And so I think having that physical role model was amazing. I also had great coaches that weren't women. And in the DC area, I grew up with Jill Ellis's dad, who really was an icon in the area once he came over from England and spent every summer going to his camps. And I feel like most of the nuances of the game I learned through him.
She was a teammate of yours, correct?
Jill was a teammate of mine. Yep. And so I had great coaches who didn't always knew the game, but knew how to motivate and kept my love of the game up. I think I had one bad coach my freshman year in high school. And I can just remember thinking I would get very upset, like, I don't know, just at him and the way he coached. And I remember thinking that I won't allow a coach to take away my love of the game. And so I was pretty fortunate. And then when I went to Princeton, Bob Bradley was the men's coach, and he went on to coach the national team and a bunch of MLS teams. And so I think I was really lucky to have some pretty high level tacticians around me. But I always was obsessed with the game. Like I continue to be obsessed with the game of soccer and watching it at every level.
What age did you start playing?
I started late by these days standards. I started at 8, third grade. Most kids are starting at like 3 or 4 now, I feel like.
Yeah. That's awesome. I don't know if you've read the book Inside Out Coaching.
I haven't.
Because he talks about like kind of you kind of become like your parents, right? Whether osmosis as a teacher, right? What you're exposed to. And then you kind of taking, maybe it is some of what even the freshman coach did that you were like, wow, I'm never going to do that. And combining it with what you saw with your peers and, those who led you become this strong, and the success you've had at both programs shows that's how you get results. So that's phenomenal.
I think also as I've gotten older as a coach, I think you give up less and less control, and you can actually learn so much more by that. Like, I feel like I learned just as much from our players, and
you give up less control, or you give more control to the players?
I give more control, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And
that's
how do you do that? What does that look like to you?
That looks like kids being able to give ideas openly and me taking them and not, you know what I mean? And not blinking about it, because we've developed those relationships, letting my staff do more, valuing input way more, and I think I've always still have a little piece of being a control freak, because I think every coach does to a certain extent. Right. But I feel like as I've gotten older, I think your mind expands, and in some way you become better because of it.
I think that's a great analogy for parenting too, right? Because, I don't know if you follow Dr. Shefali, but she talks about the parenting ego, which is we have children for our own ego, right? Like, look what I produced, right? Yeah. Aren't I great? And so then we spend all of our time, guess what she did, guess what he did. And we're so attached to that outcome. But when you become a little more evolved, you can say, that is not me. Yes. And now you get to go have the journey. And so you being open to the feedback of, hey team, doesn't mean you're managing by, whatever, democracy all the time. Like everybody gets a vote, everybody gets to say exactly what they want, but I'm taking your input, and then I'm making a decision, and we're going this way. But at least they're feeling heard. And I think that's a lot of what we're talking about, is this generation wants to be heard and seen.
No doubt.
And to be some of these coaches that are, well, you got to be here and you got to do this and listen to me, and, parenting like that as well is not a win-win, and it doesn't build a long-term relationship, right? Like,
no,
ideally,
kids want to know you care, right? Yeah. There was a high-level performance coach who had a quote yesterday, and it was like, even no professional wants to wake up and have an iPad shoved in his face in the morning before practice. Like, they want a coach who says, how are you doing? Like, what's gone on in your day? Like, like those relationships are really why I've been in coaching for this long. Like, I love the game, but mostly I love to watch people develop. And the magic of that is what keeps me involved. And I think, from a parenting perspective, I think like, it's funny because if you probably look at your kids and you look back and you realize that obviously you facilitated a lot in their lives, but kids come out with their personalities, right? And they are who they are. And I could go back and every one of my kids is the same as they were when they were 3 and 4 and 5 and 6. And you know what I mean? And I think that's a powerful thing when you think about, like, we want to think we have all this control, but really they're who they are and they belong to us, but they don't belong to us. You know what I mean? And I think,
right?
Yeah,
I think it's so beautiful when you realize
yeah,
we're the teachers. We're actually
yes.
the ones that are, if we get out of our own way. Yeah.
And I think like letting them fail, or picking the times to let them fail, right? Like there's times where you need to pick them up and put them on the right path, but there's also times where those lessons are really important, and you do have to bite your tongue and you do have to stick a sock on the sideline and really try to, think about it from almost like a higher level perspective.
Yeah, I want to talk about like looking down on it as if you weren't involved, but you were watching it happen. We always have the best advice for our friends, right? But when we're going through it, we can't figure out the solution. But when we have the exact same problem with one step removed, it's amazing how quickly the answers come, right?
And you know what, Kirsten, I will say there's a huge relationship between parents who try to control their kids' careers and burnout and dropout. And resentment. And I've seen it so much, like kids with so much talent at young ages and their parents just controlling every little piece, videoing every touch, and as a coach, you can't really tell them because they kind of just have to go through it. But I can't tell you how many kids with bright futures just ended up not playing because of that constant.
How many multi-sport athletes do you have? Like, had girls played? I mean, now that's also, when we were growing up, I played a different sport every season, right?
Yeah.
And you saw the benefits of being that having that versatility. Do you see that as much in your recruiting?
I think you don't see that as much. And I think that's a travesty because not only from, I think from a physical perspective, you're doing less harm to your bodies, not doing the same movements over and over by doing different sports. But I also think you learn to apply different things from different sports. And I think because all these club programs are such a big business that parents feel like if they don't get them into that sport right away and keep them in it, they're not going to succeed. And so I see less and less of it. Like I had a couple at Princeton, I had a couple soccer, lacrosse, and certainly some kids at the high school level, but I would say most of the high level club kids are doing it year round. And I don't know how to stop that train.
Yeah, I don't either. I think that train's left the station. So, yeah, except for when I coach the little 9 and 10-year-olds and the parents come to me and say, I'm so sorry, she's never played before. Is she going to be really behind? And I'm like, no. And I love that she does ballet and she plays piano. Like she's going to take from those and she's going to use that. And then she's going to make some new friends. I think the other thing you're talking about is for these girls to be with the same 12, 15 girls all year round, I don't think it's healthy either. Like the point of being able to be on a new team with a different coach, hearing a different voice, having a different skill set, maybe having a different role on that team, then feeling like my identity is to be the sub. And that, that's not good for your sense of self either all year round. Right? Unless you're one of those that has been an early, gets pushed to the front of the line all the time. Good. But for most kids who are late bloomers that don't really hit their stride till maybe middle of high school or into college even, right?
Yep.
I've told this story before, but I had transferred and then I switched positions. And I remember Debbie's assistant, William and Mary, he came up to me and he was Chinese and very heavy accent and said, "It's too bad you're graduating." And I said, "Why is that?" He said, "You're finally pretty good." It's like, darn.
I know, right?
So when parents are like, "Oh, you got to hurry up. They got it." No. Like take your time. Like, you're going to be a better athlete as we saw for Georgia, right? The quarterback's 25, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You are going to be better down the road, most likely, unless you're burned out.
Exactly.
You've been doing it for so long.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time. I know we need to get on with your day, but can I ask you one more thing we like to ask at the end? Okay, so it's just fun to hear different people's point of view, and you can take any angle you like. But having been a parent and an athlete and now coaching, the best athletes I know do this. What do you see from your perspective?
I think the best athletes that I know are passionate about what they do, first and foremost. They are consistent in their habits. Mm-hmm. And lastly, they take feedback and try to apply it to their game.
Growth mindset.
A growth mindset, yes.
Those are great answers. I love that. And if you have to have passion to begin with, or you're in the wrong place, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. Because the higher levels you go, the more time you're going to spend. And if you don't have, doesn't mean you're going to love every day.
No,
you can't always do what you love, but you have to love what you do. And I think, that you put those three things together, and that's a pretty good recipe.
Very good recipe for success. Well, thank you so much for your time. I so appreciate you joining me today. And this is great advice for all these parents. Where can they find you? What's the best place to follow along?
Yeah, you can find me on the William and Mary website. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram. Usually I'm under Shack's or Shack16 on social. And then you can find me on the William and Mary website super easily.
Very good. Well, I want to have you back on. I've already got like 3 other questions I didn't ask you. We'll get to next time. But parents, if you enjoyed this and you know another sports parent who's trying to do better at supporting their teen or athlete, please feel free to share and like this podcast. Send me questions. You can even text me. I'm doing the new age thing. Text me a question, 503-319-2209. Our goal is to support parents in raising not only strong athletes, but extraordinary people. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's do this.